response as a result of the perception that I have an uh-oh, irregardless of whether it's real or not. We've all got that, right? And what percentage of the time did we decide they were real? What? Less than 1%. Okay? Good. Now, let's see. I think I'm going to skip over. There's basically, well, I want to point out one thing that I think is important, because everyone, when they come to a stress class, they think, well, man, I don't like stress, I shouldn't have any. And I don't think that's accurate. As a matter of fact, those of you especially who perform in any way, a certain amount of stress is actually useful and helpful for us. And there's actually a diagram, we put it in the book, and it kind of looks like this. On one side is, let's see, performance, and on the other is stress. I think I may have gotten those mixed up, but you'll understand. And the idea is, excuse me, this stress and performance. Okay, so stress is over here, and performance is here. And as stress levels go up to a certain degree, performance levels go up as well, to a certain degree, or to a certain level. So, for example, let's say that, can I use you, Bobby, as an example? So when you're playing in a football game, would you want to be in the same state as you're in when you, state meaning physiological and psychologically, the same state as when you just wake up? You'd want to be, how would you want your physiology to be when you're out on the field? Well, like, oh, I'm feeling so good today. It's just a cool day. Would you want to be like that?
No.
So what would be different? What would be the...
Well, I know for me, like, I know the night before I can't sleep because honestly I feel stressed and my heart rate is racing.
Yeah,
my mind is...
and that's the wrong thing. We'll play with that. We'll fix that.
Yeah, but kind of like you don't want to be like all relaxed and cool. You kind of want to be mentally prepared for what is to come. And you're going to be,
right. Now, and the idea is, and this works for taking tests, doing performances in music or what, it works across the board. But the idea is, to a certain degree, stress is useful. As stress increases more than the useful amount, the performance tends to decrease. Actually, I think these actually should be the opposite now that I look at it. But you get the idea. And what do we call this kind of stress here that is the beneficial, there's a word for it, the kind of stress that is useful and helpful, and say in Bobby's case, or if somebody else is performing, playing the organ or the piano or something for a group of people or some instrument, or you're asking somebody out on a date or whatever, you want a certain amount of get moving and get going and have a little demand. What do we call that kind of stress? There's a word for it. Okay, that one's a good one. There's an actual even closer word. What did you say? Yeah, eustress. And the term, or the prefix EU, means what? Think back to your English days. What does the prefix EU mean? Eulogy, euphemism. What is, when you give a eulogy, what are you doing? Yeah, it's the good stuff about the guy or the lady who died. So this is good stress. So to a certain point, we like it. We like the demand. After we get to a certain point, though, performance tends to decrease as stress levels continue to increase. And we call that kind of stress distress. Now, if this were all we were, I mean, if this were all we had was this, we wouldn't have this class. We wouldn't care. We're all just kind of, okay, now I'm playing, okay, I'm good. Or now I'm interviewing for this job, okay, I'm good. Or I'm playing in the football game, I'm good. But the night before, when he's unable to sleep, that's this. Or you get so nervous that does anyone here play the violin? Do you? You ever been really nervous? Because that's a really, I don't know how to even do this, but if you are nervous at all, what happens?
You wobble and then it's like scraping your bow on a string or
bad things.
Make a bad sound.
Right? That's this part. I mean, you like the motivation to get up there, but if you have too much stress going on, then performance goes down. Okay, does that make sense for everyone? Bob?
With good stress, would being anxious would be in that category?
No,
of stress?
that's over here.
So you're saying like being nervous and getting stressed?
Yeah. See, if it's not helping you perform better, then that's over here. But we tend to have, we don't even think about this part because this tends to dominate.
I was just going to say like anticipation, that's not the stress.
No, that's, you're looking forward to it. But if you're looking forward to something and you're also having any of the symptoms of stress that we're going to talk about in a minute, then it's over here in the distress part. So just to get in our minds clear that there's two parts to this, but for our sake, for this class, this is, when we talk about stress, we're talking really about the distress part. Okay? Now, I want to ask a question to start off this next discussion, because we kind of want to explain, well, let me describe how the fight or flight response looks. If we were to diagram it, so we're going to go with time is going in this direction, and we're here, and we're kind of at a place of what we call homeostasis. Okay, so what does that term mean? Thinking back to our initial story of we're out at my estate on the east side on the east bench 5,000 years ago. What is homeostasis there? What does the term homeostasis mean?
Balance.
We're balanced. What?
Stable.
Yeah, it's very stable. Good, good. Our internal environment is stable. There's not a lot happening. We're just good. Chilling is how people call that sometimes. Okay? And something shows up in our environment which we're going to term a perceived threat. Suddenly you're up in front of a group of people, or somebody's following you and you don't know him, or you get a phone call, somebody asks you to do something, it takes you out of your comfort zone. Whatever it is, it's a perception of a threat. Uh-oh, is the thought. And since we perceive it as a threat, we have this fight or flight response that kicks in. All the things that we discussed the other day. Okay? Now, think back to our ancestors. When they were being chased by a bear, how long did that usually last? A couple minutes?
Well, the bear stopped or they got away?
Right, one way or the other. It wasn't a long, term kind of thing where, okay, this afternoon and into the evening they're still being chased by the bear. It was very, very short term. Actually, you're right, 2 to 3 minutes. And none of us has the ability, any runners in here who are like fast? Do we have anyone who's like really fast? Ran track? Did you run track? What did you run?
4x4.
Oh my gosh. That's really hard. So how far could you continue to go 400 speed? You couldn't keep doing that further? Like 800 or 1600 or 10 miles? Why not?
Not at their speed.
Not at that 400 speed, right? What happens when you go further than that at that speed? Or you try to? You can't do it, right? We don't have enough energy for that. Well, it's the same thing with this. As far as our fight or flight response is concerned, this is the maximum we have energy for. Okay? Even if we combine all of our energy, you know, we take it away from the immune system, the digestive system, reproductive, we don't have energy to handle being chased by a bear longer than this. And then at some point, the bear was gone, or we were dead, but the bear was gone, and we went through this phase called exhaustion. We're spent. You know, there's nothing left in the tank, 400 running speed, okay? And we're pooped, man. And after a little bit of rest time, then we return to homeostasis again. And that's how it's designed to run. And we like it that way. That's how our, like in the video, it said, our ancestors conditioned this response into us. Now it's instinctive. Now it's, you know, it's automatic. It's part of our autonomic nervous system. We don't have to think about it. But our ancestors, apparently, it became a part of them as they adapted to their environment. Okay. That's how it's supposed to happen. What's different now, as far as this is concerned, than how our ancestors were? Exactly. Yeah, they keep going. Have you ever had to be, well, anytime you have a test coming up, or Bobby's lying there at night, he's not playing football, he's lying there, but in his mind he's playing football. And he's thinking about, maybe, I'm guessing, but part of that is all the things that will happen if he blows it. If he doesn't make the catch, or if he misses an assignment or something. And so he's thinking, and all his body's hearing is, uh-oh. So, you're getting ready for a test. Big, important test. Your body doesn't know it's just a test. All it hears is, oh man, if I blow this test, oh jeez. Now, today what I want to do is explore what happens when, as a result of, we call this chronic stress. In other words, keeps on going in a state of activated fight or flight. This is activated fight or flight. Now, before I get into the different things that can happen, I want to ask a question to anyone who's, and I hope this isn't, if it's not too personal, if it's too personal, I don't say it, but I want to ask, has anyone in here ever gotten really drunk? I mean, just blasted. Several of you have. So raise your hands again. So I want to ask you three right here. Can I ask you three just, so how, when you were drunk, like, so you have, I don't know how many drinks you have, it takes you to get really drunk, but the next morning when you wake up, how did you feel? Meaning, what did it feel like? What was the...
Heavy, tired,
sick, like what?
headache, stomachache.
What was that for you? Anything else?
Your digestive system's not very happy.
So you're throwing up, and are you still throwing up in the morning after? What about you? Do you remember?
same thing, but I was just really tired.
So all of these sound like really wonderful feelings to me. Now, I'm not being critical of people who drink. That's between you and your liver. That's your own deal. But the thing that, okay, on the other side, how many of you have had this experience where you just go out for a jog or something, or you go have a salad? I know that sounds so weird, but if you just went and ate a salad, or you went for a jog, how do you feel after doing either of those two things? Where it's a light, you're not like trashing your body, but it's just, you know, I gotta get out. Like last night we went golfing and I hadn't done anything all day, and just getting out and walking around, I was immediately feeling better. How do you feel when you do those kind of things? Anyone ever noticed?
You feel like you can just keep going.
Yeah.
Go home and your mind's clearer. And
it's a good feeling, right? Well, the point I'm trying to make here is with most things that we do, and we don't really pay too much attention to this, but with most things that we do, behaviors, our body will give us feedback saying that's a good call or that's not a good call by how we feel. It might be a new concept for some of us, but your body always gives you feedback. And so getting drunk, it gives you feedback saying, man, that's a stupid thing to do to have that many. So here's how I'm going to show you how stupid it is. Sick feeling. Doesn't mean you're a bad person. It just means you've done a dumb thing that your liver and your brain don't like. Okay? And you know that already. Not being judgmental about that. Your body says, man, that was a wonderful thing. Let me show you how much I like exercise by letting you feel really good. Why would it do that?
it wants you to do it more.
Exactly. It's giving you feedback and conditioning you to keep doing it because it knows it's a good thing for you. It's a healthy thing. It's an improving your environment kind of thing. Does that make sense for everyone? Okay. Stress is along those lines, same lines. When we are in this state of chronic stress for longer than we're supposed to be, our body starts to give us feedback saying, bad call, don't do this. Now, I want to go through kind of what that would look like. Well, I'm going to leave that there. If we continue to stay in this chronic stress mode. Now, all stress, every stress that we have, in other words, this activating event right here begins with a thought. And what was that thought, did we decide? Uh-oh, right? We have that thought of uh-oh. And which leads to the perceived threat. So this action here. Okay, so here's uh-oh, and we have the perception of a threat which leads to this. Okay? Now, and we'll call that, so that's our stress. Now, if we continue to be up in here, if we continue to stay in this chronic stress mode, we start to get feedback. Our body starts to tell us, bad call. And this first level, or this first kind of symptoms that we start to notice, we would call just strains. Nothing too serious at this point, but our body starts to give us, and our mind as well, start to give us feedback saying, something's amiss here, and I don't like it. Something's out of balance, because really, when you're in the stress response, every system in the body is out of balance. It is not homeostasis. So, what are some examples of things that we've experienced, or we know other people who have experienced, that are kind of in this mode of just strains, things that are kind of going wrong because we're out of balance? that we say, man, that's probably because of my stress.
I hold my stress in my shoulders and my lower back, so if I feel like you can there, I know that I'm getting stressed.
So some tension that's not normally there. Okay. What else? That was what else? Other things do you start to notice?
Hives.
Hives. That's later on. I'm going to hang on. Tiredness. So fatigue. Why does it make sense? And this is cool for us to know, I think. Why does it make sense that we would be tired because we're in this chronic stress mode? Why does that make sense?
Stress is taking up all your energy.
Yeah.
I've got nothing left.
Imagine, can I use this for a second? This right here?
Yeah, there's a laptop in there.
Cool, that's even better.
Okay.
That's a very small laptop. So imagine, and I'm not very strong, but if I hold this out here like this,
Okay.
I promise I won't drop it. I got good hands too, so if I do, I'll catch it. So imagine if I hold this out here, right? How long could I do this before my arm kind of says, yeah, it hurt, that's too much. So why would my arm start to get tired in the first place? It can only handle so much. You know, some of us maybe 30 seconds, other of us maybe 3. At some point, everyone's going to feel the tiredness of that pressure being put on it.
Thank you.
It's the same way with us. If we have our shoulders always tight. I remember I worked in a bank a long time ago. I had several jobs in the bank. And there was one girl there who was our secretary. Really, really delightful person. All day long. This was the extent of her day. Talk, 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 talk. Type, type, type. 5 o'clock would come around. Oh, I'm so tired. I'm just wasted. I'd look at her and go, what in the world do you have to be tired about? You haven't done a thing all day. I don't know, but I'm so tired. Well, what is going on? She's still thinking about stuff, and that is turning into energy that's being taken from, just being energy, filled with energy, as well as those muscles are constantly tight. Okay, what other things? Grumpy. That's an interesting one. How could we explain why that happens?
Our tolerance level's a little bit lower.
Okay, let me. How could we explain this? And I want to explain all of these in terms of our running or fighting the big bear. Because that's the only reason why these are happening, is because this engine is running. Why would we be grumpy? Why does it make sense that we might be grumpy?
Because you can't beat the bear. You're like, just go away, bear.
Okay, that's partly part of it. Yeah. My thinking. Go ahead.
It's because so much of your thought process is going into these things that are stressing you, so you don't feel like you have time or the motivation
Okay,
to deal with people.
that's more cognitive stuff. I want to go back to that brainstem part that, remember they showed in the movie of the hypothalamus and the brainstem, the part that is what's natural. Why would we naturally be grumpy?
Maybe all the chemicals that we use for like the endorphins and the feel goods are sent to other places. So.
Maybe. I'll tell you why I think. All of these things may be, and I'm not discounting any of these things, but the fight or flight response, the fight part of it involves trying to kill the bear. And there's a certain amount of emotional energy that has to be there naturally to create that intensity to handle that big job of taking on the lion or the bear. Does that make sense? It's natural for us to have that happen because that's what had to be natural for our ancestors. I think. Okay, what other things? Can you think of anything else that's kind of in the in this mode? Scott? Oh, I thought. Or, what's your name again? I'm sorry.
David.
David. Played ball with these the other day. Did anything come to your mind? I thought I saw your hand go up. Nothing? What other things? So we'll use yours. What?
I was going to say, when I'm grumpy, it's because I didn't have any food. Because of
Okay, so that's a different deal altogether. I'm going to use yours, Bobby, though, of insomnia. Can't sleep. Now. Good. Okay, let's analyze that for a second in terms of the fight or flight, because it's extremely interesting. Let's go with this one first. Why does it make sense that we would not easily fall asleep when we're stressed from the point of view of the fight or flight response? Yeah.
Because everything is on and you're still in your like OPAP mode.
Mm-hmm.
You're not going to want to sleep.
Right.
Well, you release adrenaline, so obviously your body's going to have reactive phase.
And adrenaline is going to is a hormone that is a get moving hormone, not a falling asleep hormone. Right. So, oh, what did you think?
I was just going to say falling asleep's not very conducive to getting awake.
Right, or fighting a bear. If you've been telling yourself all day that you should be fighting a bear, the last thing your body wants to do is fall asleep because it thinks you're still in danger. That's why I say it's a piece of cake to fix insomnia. It's a piece of cake to fix sleeping problems, because all you have to do is take yourself out of this. And your body knows what to do. It knows how to. You fell asleep in seconds when you were 2. So you know how to do it. You just have to get your mind out of there. We'll play with that a little later on. Now, the appetite change. Why would that happen as a natural occurrence based on the stress response?
Well, again, kind of like sleeping, like if you're fighting a bear, you're not going to stop and eat something.
Right.
Or
Right.
it is like the extra burning of energy, like, oh, I'm so hungry because I've been working all day or something, and that's why, like, increased appetite.
Right, too. So you said both sides of that. Now, how many in here are on the side where if you are stressed, you can't eat anything? How many are that? So how many of you, how many are when you are stressed, you just eat like crazy? So half of you are weird, right? Something's wrong with half of us, because it was about half. No, it's interesting that both of those things kick in. Now, why does it make sense that we would want to eat more food?
Keep going.
Yes, because that's energy. And what is our quickest form of energy? Sugar. So, Hostess, or chips or whatever. It makes perfect sense why people eat when they have emotional problems, because one, it feels good, but two, the more associated with this is our ancestors, they didn't know if they were going to have food. So they would store it up so that if they were not able to get to food soon, they'd have some on them so that they could survive. Isn't that interesting? Now, on the opposite side, so for those of us who can't eat anything, digestive system turns off because we have to use that energy for something, for fighting and running, and so it recruits it from the digestive system. Okay. Isn't that interesting? Okay. So we kind of get that idea. We have strains. If we still aren't getting the picture that we need to make a change, we start to feel certain kinds of pain. So what might be examples of pain that is, we can say with some confidence, yeah, I'm feeling that and I'm pretty sure it's because of the stress.
Irrational fear.
Irrational fear. So where does that hurt?
What's a fear?
So brain pain.
Brain?
Headache.
Well, it's debilitating. It's just as real as any physiological symptoms, I would say.
So I'm going to hold off on that idea because that is central to our discussion on thinking, which we'll get to. And absolutely, that's a big part of the problem of why all this happens. Today I kind of want to just focus on what are the symptoms that take place as a result of that improper thinking, those irrational fears or those perceptions that we're thinking. Because I think that is here the same thing as the perceived threat. An irrational fear is clear up there. But if we keep holding on to that, I heard the story once of, or actually I was listening to a radio talk show. There was a guy who was kind of a counselor. He was on the radio, and there was a woman who was calling in, and she had been, and I'm not treating this lightly in any way, I think it's despicable, but she had been raped when she was like 20 years ago. And to this day, when she was calling the guy, to that day, she still was having horrible symptoms, bad problems that she attributed to that initial rape. And she was having bad relationships and, all kinds of problems. And the guy was asking, well, what's going on in your head now? And she said, well, I just am so afraid that somebody's going to rape me again. An irrational fear. Nothing, not to make light of rape, but he asked her, and I loved this. I absolutely loved the question was, well, how many times did this guy rape you? And she said, well, once. And he said, well, how many times has he raped you since then in your mind? She went, wow, thousands and thousands. The idea being that those subsequent thoughts of how bad it was creating a physiology that was killing her. So I want to hold on to that idea because it's central to the prevention part. But you're right on the nose about how important it is. What other thing? So I heard headache. So why would somebody ever have a headache as a result of this happening here? Why does it make sense that would happen?
If your shoulders are stressed, you can push your back out of alignment, and then it can put pressure on the back of your skull.
Okay. Anytime you have, when you have a headache and you're a drug taker, I mean like aspirin or whatever, what do you usually go for? Tylenol. And what is it designed to do? But how does it do it? Okay. I know that most of them that you take, there's a tendency to relax muscles. You open up blood vessels, that might help increase oxygen to the muscles, but you take some kind of a muscle relaxant, which ultimately is what they are. Why would you want your muscles to relax? Well, if you've been in this fight or flight, and fight or flight is getting these muscles just tight as you can so you can knock the tar out of the thing. If that's what's going on all day long, those muscles here are connected to these muscles on our head. 95% of headaches are this kind of tension headache that we have. 95%. Headaches are easy to fix. We see them disappear all the time in here. as soon as you relax here and here, the pain that's associated with that physiology goes away. Because your body has understood the message, oh, I'm doing something wrong. And when you relax, it goes, thank you. So here's no more pain. Okay, any other pains you can think of? Chest pain. Like
Not like you're having a hard time, but you feel like your chest is really tight and it hurts.
how would you explain that one in terms of the fight or flight response?
Heart's working hard.
Might be your heart is just working like crazy. That might be part of it. What do you think? Yeah. Yeah. It might be that you're... And all the wrong muscles are involved with breathing. You know, really you have one muscle that is designed for breathing. These other, they're called intercostal muscles. They're only designed to help out in the breathing when you really need the extra oxygen. But if all day long you're thinking you're needing extra oxygen, how many of us were chest breathers when we did this the other day? Few of us? Yeah. Does a baby breathe in its tummy or its chest? Tummies. Chest doesn't move. But when we get into this response, our muscles through here are going, man, I need to get these lungs open up quicker. Right? That might explain that too. Okay? What other pains might we have? What do you think? Flu. I'm going to hold off on that one to down the road just a bit, so when I get to the next one, we'll play with that one, and it's so interesting, that one.
Other than flu, like I just get stomach aches, so not nauseous.
Stomach ache. Yeah. Now why does that make sense?
No blood going down there.
Certainly, the blood flow has changed to the muscles. Yeah. Which means when you eat some food, you know, you eat a hamburger for lunch today, and you don't chew it very much even, and so it's like these, somehow you've got to make those, like let's say you eat a double Whopper for lunch. Okay? And you know, some of us, we could eat that thing in probably 4 bites. You know, it's down in 4 bites. Well, it's sitting in your stomach, and ultimately it has to go through in your intestines capillaries that are microscopic. So something moves it from big globs of protein to microscopic sized nutrients. What does that? Yeah, the acids and the alkalins that are in our stomach that are breaking it down like crazy. Now, when we're in the fight or flight response, the pancreas kind of says, I don't think I want to work out right now. I don't think I want to send you what you need. So the wrong acid-alkaline balance goes into play there. And so digestion, so as a result of that, it's a yucky feeling. Because it's still thinking I should digest a little, but it can't. Okay? What other things would be? The whole works. Heartburn is a perfect example of that. Diarrhea, absolutely. We'll call that the Pepto-Bismol. The plumbing. And the other plumbing as well. So what other, can you think of any other pains?
Your whole body aches from the tension. You get neck pain, back.
Yeah, it was interesting. When I was living back east, I used to teach a yoga class for it was primarily older women who came, and they were all, the doctors had referred them and said, your joint, pain is pretty bad and we can't help you much more, they would come to the yoga class and always feel better. They would always, because we would always be very, very relaxed by the end of class after having done the yoga. And so they get relief from that joint pain. You know, once they come out of here, once they're back to homeostasis, the body goes, oh, okay, now I can get back to healing things and making things better. Does anyone have fibromyalgia or know people who have fibromyalgia? And this is kind of down the road a little bit, but you know somebody who has fibromyalgia? What is it like for her as far as what the term fibromyalgia means what?
Like she was like sometimes like muscle pain.
Yeah.
Bunch of other stuff, but nothing really like serious. It doesn't ever go away. And when she checks out, makes it worse.
Yeah, and I'm convinced, after studying it for as long as I have, that fibromyalgia is almost exclusively a stress disorder. Because they can't explain it any other way. Maybe nutritionally, but fibromyalgia 20 years ago was not a thing. Nobody had, you don't know, there wasn't a soul who had fibromyalgia that I knew of. They didn't even have that name. Maybe they did, but nobody was talking about it. Well, a lot of people do now. It's just pretty much, it hurts all over the place, primarily in the muscles. Why does it make sense that that would be the case? Yeah, if you're tensing your muscles all day, it's like lifting the laptop. It's going to hurt after a while. Fibromyalgia is the feedback saying, get out of this mode. So if we're still not getting the message, if we're still not listening to what our body's telling us, we start to experience immobility. So what might be some examples? Okay, so we're going to use yours. You said the flu, right? So that would fall in here. Why does it make sense that somebody would get the flu? Because of stress or as a result of chronic activation of the stress response. Right, that's why. If you're constantly, and man, I could tell you tons of stories and studies that have shown, let me tell you just one quick one. Let's see if I can remember it exactly. There was one study they did with medical students, first-year medical students, and apparently that's pretty tough to be a first. It's kind of a weeding out process, at least it was at this particular school. And they tested people for, and I'm pretty sure, if I'm remembering right on this one, it was for cortisol. So they did salivary cortisol. In other words, they could test, you know how you said the two main hormones are adrenaline and cortisol? Well, they can test for cortisol in your saliva. It's an easy thing to test. We've done it here. You can test for cortisol, and they tested them at the beginning of the semester. Oh, and they also tested for an immune, an immune molecule, something, let me think. It might have been white blood cells. I'm sorry I'm not remembering the details of this, but the essence of it is still accurate, that they tested these people at the beginning of the semester for stress levels as well as whatever they used to measure the immune functioning, and then right before one of their Hummer exams, they tested the same things, and stress levels were high and immune levels were just completely compromised. I mean, it wasn't perceptual, it was physiological. And there's dozens and dozens of stories like that.
So then my question is, why do we put ourselves through this? Why do we even have institutions that do this? Like, we all know this isn't good for us, so why don't we design our society in a way that's more conducive to our well-being?
We're working on it. We're trying. But we're sucked in tradition. I mean, tradition drives the whole society, and nobody's realized there might be a different way. That's my quick answer. I know it's stupid,
I feel like
but we still do it.
if we were to change us, not the society, everything would fall into place. Like if we changed how we handle these stressful tests, then the tests can remain the same. They'll be crazy huge and difficult and whatever, but if we handle them in a more stress-free way, our environment would change, and so would. You get where I'm going?
Yes, yes. Yeah.
Aren't there people that like professional soldiers and stuff like that, and sports players as well? They train their bodies how to deal with the stress.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, all of you will be experts at staying here by the end of this semester. At least you'll know how. You'll be very, very good. Or you'll be very good at going from here to here. I guarantee it. Because what we do in here works. Most people, they stay in this, everything about their lives is a perceived threat. And I was listening to a guy on the radio the other day. He was talking about the big, what was it, Irene? The big, and there were people who, certainly, you know, kind of a scary situation. No question it was a scary situation. But there were people after it was over who were still, when they weren't in the least bit of danger, were still you know, he mentioned that he went outside and there was a lady next door to he lived in New York, and there was a lady out there just sitting there on her porch just crying and crying about how bad things were for her on her porch. And she could go inside and be inside and safe and everything. There was nothing stressful about her condition in that moment, but in her head, she was living in, this is the worst thing that could possibly happen. It wasn't. She was fine. And that's what we've trained ourselves to do. I think, you know, a lot of the pharmacy people and the medical community kind of like this because it feeds their pockets with a lot of money. I'll show you. Yeah, fibromyalgia. There you go.
Fibromyalgia.
This is like a proven scientific thing. Why don't they implement it in our education system?
We're trying.
And like in elementary, I was taking a class similar to this to realize that label certain circumstances as a stress or not. I don't know how to deal with it because I think, to be honest, that would be the most crucial time in my life if I could find it, rather than already kind of develop kind of skills with myself.
Would you agree, Mary Kay? Yeah.
I think a lot of the times people don't want to admit that something's wrong with their process. And so they're not going to sign up for a stress management class because they feel like they don't even have it.
Yeah.
And that's the sickness we have in our community.
Yeah. Well, and then if there is something wrong, it's quick fix.
Exactly.
Pop a pill so I can feel better for the really, really short term while I have the side effects of the pill. It's really, I agree with all you guys. It's upside down and backwards every way you can think of it. And we're trying our hardest to spread the word. We have a lot of students who are in health promotion. That's their major, and that's our job. That's our profession, is to be preaching wellness, preaching prevention, preaching helping people, whether it's groups or individuals, to be, you know, here most of the time, regardless of the situation. It's a big job. It's a great question, though. I mean, it's a very appropriate question that we're trying to do something about. And you guys will all, I mean, the ripple effect will happen. You guys will all come out of here and you'll teach your friends, and you'll have resources that you can point them at for helping, and they'll help other people. I mean, really, that's how it has to happen, is we're just throwing the rock out there and hoping the ripples spread, and then you're another rock, more ripples. So, but it's a tough job. Okay, so what was the last thing we put on here? What did we just mention? Did we say anything else besides flu? Okay, so what else can we add here? Migraines. Is that how you spell that? Man, now I...
Yeah, we got it.
I don't like to spell things wrong. I just had to... So, I want to go back. Let's hold on to... Let's go to here, and I want to add something in this. And that would be difficulty concentrating, or thinking difficulties, or inability to remember. Yes?
Are you saying like that kind of going along with like the ADD? I was wondering like how you said fibromyalgia is kind of created. It's not like a real disease. It's like ADD like that where you can't concentrate.
Maybe. And I didn't say fibromyalgia isn't a real disease. It's one that, I mean, most diseases are, we've created them by virtue of our environment and our psychology. But ADD is kind of like, why does it make sense? Let's ask this question, and maybe it'll help answer that one. Why does it make sense that you would have a difficult time focusing on anything? So whether that's a test or something you're reading, you ever been reading something and you read a paragraph and you go, let me read that again. Let me read that again. And you think, I know something's in there, but why does it make sense that that would be happening if we're in this chronic stress mode?
Could be because we're in a defensive survival state of mind and everything that happens kind of alert for us because we need to have reaction.
And that is why, that's how that would relate, I think, to the ADD part, what's next? What do I got to do now? Oh, over there, okay. Instead of single-mindedness of ability to focus. Remember when we did the Einstein and the lizard brain? Einstein checks out. We don't need Einstein during this part. The ability to focus and to stay focused for an extended amount of time and to recall and to be able to construct ideas in our head. It's all about, well, how do I get out of here right now? Or who can I fight to get out of here right now? And I think that's partly the ADD thing. I think there's other things going on there. But it's so interesting when students, over and over, when they learn the relaxation exercises, especially 2 or 3 of them, and they practice them before they take tests, it's like, oh, I can't believe how much I remembered. It was like suddenly I could recall everything that I needed to know that I don't usually, and it makes perfect sense because when we're here, Einstein's cranking. When do you have your most clear thinking happen for you?
In the morning?
Yeah, when you're waking up, right? If you're not in a real hurry, you know, some of us wake up and, oh, geez, it's like the first thing we wake up and we're like, oh, the Pop-Tart and get out of here. That's about how fast our time. But those days when there's nothing going on and you wake up slowly and you think, okay, let me think about what I have to know for this test or what I have to do to prepare for that test. And your mind's like, it's like sifting through all the information and it's coming clearly, and then you get into the test and blank slate. Does that happen for, it happened for me, that's how it was. Einstein checks out. So what we do is we teach you how to really relax, and so you stay here during what would normally be a stressful thing. You stay here during the test, you do way better. Yeah, and everything associated with that.
So are there reproductive less testing as well?
I think, and this is again one of my beliefs, having studied this for as long as I have, is all of those reproductive related problems, almost, I won't say 100%, but I'll say 90-some% is stress related. Reproductive system, unnecessary when you're running from the bear. And everything about it. So yes, I would say so. Excellent example. Okay, any other immobility kinds of things that you can think of where you can't function at normal levels?
What about muscle twitching?
Yeah, I think that would be way back here. But possibly. What do you think?
Would it get to the point where you feel like you can't go to school, you can't go to work,
Yeah.
you can't go see your friends?
And I'm going to kind of lump that into what were you thinking?
I was gonna say that too, but and like muscle cramp.
Yeah.
Like too much tension where it actually physically like.
Yeah, and that might be overuse. I mean, that might be a physical thing as well as the but let's play with depression here for a second. I know that some of us in here struggle with this or have struggled in our own past, and there's nothing wrong with you if you do. I'm not being critical. When you go to the doctor and he or she diagnoses you and you say, well, why do I have this depression? What does he or she usually say? Here's why you have this depression, and here's how I can fix that with this pill. What does he say? You have a chemical imbalance, right? We've all heard that. We have a chemical. I have several friends who are doctors, and they're so convinced it's a chemical imbalance. There's nothing you can do about it. And my question is, what caused the chemical imbalance in the first place? Because I'll ask you, people who, I can't help it, I'm just depressed and there's nothing. My question is, were you depressed when you were 5? Were you depressed when you were 11? Most people say, well, no, of course not. Well, then something has happened that you've created that makes that chemical imbalance happen. If it wasn't congenital, if it wasn't in your genes, so neither of those two are the causes or the reason, people say, well, it's in our family. There may be a tiny genetic component, but it's very small. So I ask, well, what caused the chemical imbalance? And so if you look at the hormones related to the stress response and the turning off of the ones that are the feel-good hormones, because you don't need those when you're in the stress response. It's mostly adrenaline and cortisol. Testosterone still is involved there to some degree, but none of those feel-good chemicals are happening. So it is an imbalance, but you've created it. And so we, again, instead of popping a pill, and I'm not being critical if this is what you're doing, but my thinking is, let's get you back to here, or here, restore that balance, and watch what happens. Watch how much you still need the pills, because really, when you give yourselves the right environment, most things heal themselves. You had a comment?
I was reading somewhere, and they were saying sunlight.
Mm-hmm.
We're inside all day. We
Exactly.
go outside, we play video games, and it's the sunlight that we're not getting that can cause.
Oh man, if you had any idea how much the vitamin D research is just exploding, that we definitely need to spend time in the sun.
And all the sunscreen too. I mean,
Yeah.
you want some sun, you don't want to get burned, but the sunscreen blocks your body from producing.
You are right. You are right about that. And that's a different deal altogether, kind of a little more in the nutrition and wellness world, but that plays into it. I'm not saying that all depression is because of stress, but if there's a chemical imbalance, let's find out if I had a friend who, or I was in class, I remember when I was working on my degree, my bachelor's degree is in psychology, and I was taking a class at BYU, and the professor of this class, really, he was a psychiatrist, and he would work with people who were depressed, and there's a lot of depressed people in Provo.
Not happy valley?
It's not that happy. So he would work with a lot of people, and the first thing he would tell them is, okay, I will work with you, but first I want you to go for the next 6 weeks and exercise every day. He says, I want you to exercise, aerobic exercise, work out, sweat, get out of breath every day, or at least 5 times a week. He said he lost half of his patients. Now, I don't know if they just didn't come back because they wanted somebody else who's going to give them a pill, or they actually did get better, but we're finding that for depression, exercise is as useful as depression medication and no side effects. When we exercise, we restore balance. We bring ourselves out of this response here by moving ourselves as if we are fighting or running.
Well, aren't there people who are so stressed out that, when we talk about you can't sleep, and I know I've had friends where they'd go and exercise so that they could sleep, but they would only be able to, so their body would get so tired that it would shut their brain down for a certain amount of time, but then as soon as the body got to a relaxed state where it was starting to get into the deep sleep, then the brain would take over again. And it would start running.
So they've conditioned themselves to stay up in that. Is that what you're saying?
Well, they've been in that for so long that to try to get out, they do heavy exercise, but the condition was still there here.
Yes.
So their mind would snap them out of it as soon as the body got to a place where it could really relax.
Yeah. And so that's the thinking part, and it's like a muscle, and we'll play with that a ton in here about how to keep ourselves from going in that direction. If it all starts with our thoughts, then we have to reconstruct our thinking, but it is a muscle that we have to rebuild because we're so conditioned to think the other way, and it's making a mess of things. It's a big job for some people. Okay. Are there any? So if we don't get this message in the last minute, are there any diseases, and let me ask this in a different way. Usually we would go through and make a laundry list of problems, of diseases, actual, you go to the doctor for getting help kind of diseases. Are there any diseases you can think of that aren't associated with stress, that there isn't a stress component?
The disease in itself says dis-ease of all the body is not at ease, which is pretty much almost everything.
Perfect. Yeah. When we were writing the book, and I love that, dis-ease. That means this is ease here, this is dis. That's really great. I like that. When we were writing the book, we were going through all of the different chronic conditions, and it was really hard for us to find any that stress didn't make worse, from heart disease and cancer and diabetes, holy cow, to most all of the, bacterial, viral, the cancers, every single one of them, because you have a compromised immune system or because you're taxing your body out of balance, it made them worse. We were hard-pressed to find any. Let me give this final handout really fast. I know we're running just a tad long, but let me give you this cool handout. And I want to mention one thing on here before we leave. And as I'm doing this, so the good news of this, see, this is the last day that we'll care about the problems. Because, you know, it's good to know the problems so that you know that they're there, but it's even better to know the solution. So we'll spend the whole rest of the semester focusing on the solution, either prevention or turning off the stress response. That's what we're about. Let's see, were there any extras? Thank you. Okay, so let me just point you at, really quickly, you can read through these, but I wanted you to hit this first one. 60 to 90% of doctor visits are stress related. In other words, 60 to 90% of every visit to a hospital or a family physician has a stress component. It doesn't mean that's what's getting you there, or you don't realize that, but based on what we've learned today, we understand why. Okay? Good stuff. Be sure to do Chapter 3 before Saturday. It'll be up there today for you to do. Thanks, everyone. Have a great day.